Hi everyone, this is Ruchikara from People Love. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I first of all want to thank you guys for the amazing response to my first tutorial. That's the first album tutorial I did before this, and I just want to thank you all with this new one that I've come up with the beautiful graphic 45 papers called Portrait of a Lady. Guys, it's literally one of my most favorite paper collections. They're so beautiful. And as you can see, I've used each and every bit and piece of this paper bag, and along with that I've also used the matching chipboard pieces. That is also completely used up. It's one of my most favorite paper collections. So this album is actually a no scrap album, which means if you cut your paper thoughtfully, you'll be able to come up with the entire album in exactly half of your paper bag. That is one sheet each of the 12 designs, and you'll be left with no scraps whatsoever. Basically, you just need 11 to 12 sheets of any 12 by 12 papers and a few sheets of cardstock, and you will be able to finish this album with almost no scraps. So let's just quickly go through what we're going to do today. So this album has 6 pages and 12 sides, and all of them are differently designed. And I've just used some ribbon closures, and here I have a brad closure, and these are beautiful graphic 45 brads. And I also have this very pretty graphic 45 metal pin with a cabochon center. And honestly, these papers are really so pretty that you don't need a lot of embellishing. And so this tutorial is a quick one, and I've not gone into too many technical details unlike the first album. But if you have any queries, please feel free to ask me in the comment section. So these are the tools and materials you need, and this is the cutting guide. You can just pause the video here, take a screenshot, do the cutting, and then come back. So let's get started. So first we're going to start with the 7 3/4 by 12 inches. This is our hinge, and we'll just put the 12 inches on top on the scoreboard and make the following score lines. The scoring is done. Now turn the paper to the back side, and we're going to make markings of where our tape is going to go, so which is going to be the first of every that broad strip that we have. So we have 6 of those, and we're just going to put half-inch tape on where we've done the markings. Just make sure that the tape is not on the score line but in between the two score lines. Now I'm not going in absolute detail with how to do the hinge and the cover. If you're a beginner, then you can just refer to the first tutorial that I've done. I've explained it in detail over there. Now here, after we're done with the taping, I'm just sticking everything down like that, so that we make 6 hinges for 6 pages. Now once you're done making the hinge, just completely fill the backside with your double-sided tapes. And next we're going to put these 3/8 inch tapes in the front on each side of all the 6 hinges. And just make sure you put it on the outside edge, leaving around 1/8 inch at the bottom, like this. Now burnish it well with your bone folder and repeat the same thing on the other side. So our hinge is done. Now we'll move on to the cover. We have our 3 chipboard pieces, and we're gonna put tapes on the back side of all the 3 pieces. After this, we're going to take our 2 pieces of cardstock, that is 9 1/4 by 10 1/4 inches. Now turn it to the back side and make sure that the long side is vertically like from top to bottom is our 10 and a quarter inch side, and we're just gonna put a half-inch tape on one of the long edges of one piece of the cardstock. Now just attach the other piece of the cardstock to this and press it down firmly. Now we're going to put the chipboard on our cardstock. So just lay down your chipboard pieces like this so that you have a 1 inch border on the outside and 3/16 of an inch in between your chipboard pieces. I'm just eyeballing it, but if you want, you can measure and mark everything down and then stick your chipboard pieces. Now just press everything down firmly, and after that you're going to take your embossing tool and go over all the four sides of the chipboards, only the outer edges. Now just gently fold on these outside edges. Now we're going to diagonally cut our corners like this, leaving 1/8 inch space after the corner of the chipboard. Next, we're going to apply our tape on all the four corners, including the space between the chipboard. Just go over it with your bone folder like that. Now, I'm using a 1 inch tape. In case you don't have that and you have a half-inch tape, I would recommend putting a half-inch strip on the edge of the chipboard like that, and the other half-inch on the edge of the cardstock. Now remove the tape backing of one of the long edges, and we're going to start pressing it down from the center to the side like this. Go over it with your bone folder and press the corner, the excess 1/8 inch that we had left, just like this. And just do the same thing on all the sides. Now next, just go over gently with your bone folder in the in-between spaces, and now we're going to attach our hinge right in the center. So I'm using my mat to determine the center, and once I'm sure, I'm just gonna stick it down and go over all the gussets with my bone folder. Now gently push the bone folder in the in-between space as well, and simultaneously folding your cover like this, and also burnish the outside edges nicely, and we're done. Now next up, we're gonna score and tape our rest of the cardstock pieces. Now for this, you can just follow the instructions that I've put on the screen for each cardstock piece. For example, this first one is 4 pieces of 8.5 by 6 inches, and we're going to score it on the long side at 8 inches. Now let's start constructing our pages. So we're going to start with two pieces of 8.5 by 6 inches. Now place the first one like this with the flap on top and attach the second piece at the bottom like this. And now we'll attach the other side. Make sure your page is completely flat while you're sticking this and go over it with your board folder. So this is your page 1 and page 2. So on the first page, on the right side, we're going to attach this 5.5 by 7 inch flap. I'm just using the mat to make sure that it's in the center. And on that, we're going to attach this 4.5 by 6 inch flap like this. Now the second page is plain. And the third one is this 10.25 by 12 inch piece. Now I'm using this Martha Stewart 1 inch punch on my pocket. Now this is completely optional. Now here I have a pocket at the bottom and a side flap. Now on the other side we're going to attach this 4 3/4 by 8 inch flap. Now page 3 is done. On the back side we're going to attach this 9 by 6 inch piece. This is going to be the base of our page 4, and we have our 5 by 7 trifold on this page, which we're going to make with one piece of 7 by 10 inches, and we're going to attach this 5.5 by 7 inch flap like this to make it a trifold. Now we'll attach to the page later with the DSP. And next we have one piece of 9 by 6 inches and one piece of 10.25 by 8 inches. Make sure the flap is on the left side, and we're going to attach this 9 by 6 inch piece on the back side of our 10.25 by 8 inch piece. Now the base is done. This 9 by 6 inch side is your page 5, and we are attaching a large pocket that measures 6.5 by 7 inches at the bottom of this page. And we're going to attach a top flap here which measures 4.5 by 6 inches, and your page 5 is also done. Now on page 6 you're going to attach this 3.5 by 8 inch flap on the inner edge of your side flap like this. So next is page 7, which is this 10 3/8 by 8 inch piece. Make sure your flap is on the right side, and on the back of this piece you're going to attach another 9 by 6 inches, which is the base of your page 8. So the base is done. Now page 7 has stacked pockets along with this side flap. So first we're going to attach the bottom pocket, that is 3.25 by 7 inches, and next we're going to put the top pocket, that is 2 5/8 by 7 inches. Now make sure you don't cover that 1/8 inch gusset that we have before the flap. Page 7 is done. Moving on to page 8. Here we're going to attach this 4.5 by 6 inch piece at the bottom, and again I'm using my border punch, which is completely optional. So I'm just going to attach this at the bottom of our page 8. We'll stick the sides of the pocket with liquid glue after we do the DSP. Now moving on to page 9-10, we need one piece of 10.25 by 8 inches, and on the back side we're going to put our last piece of 9 by 6 inches. So the plain side is our page 9, and we're going to attach these 4 small flaps over here, starting with one of the side flaps on the top left corner, moving on to a top flap on the top right corner of the page, and then another side flap on the bottom right corner, and then a bottom flap at the bottom left corner. That's our page 9. Now on page 10 we have this side flap, and on the other side we're going to attach this 10 3/4 by 12 inch flap, which has a pocket at the bottom, and we're going to attach this 4.25 by 4 inch piece as the pocket on the other flap. We'll do that with the DSP. So moving on to the last page now, that's page 11 and 12. So for the base we're going to attach our last two pieces of 8.5 by 6 inches, just like we did for the first page. And on page 11 we're going to attach this top and bottom flap that measures 4.5 by 6 inches. And on our last page we have our 5 by 7 trifold, just like we did on page 4 with the 7 by 10 inch and 5.5 by 7 inch pieces. And that's it. We're done with the base of all our pages, and I'm just going through all of those quickly. So all that's left for the base is our back inside cover, and we have these two diagonal pockets that will go on the bottom. So we're going to put the short edge on the bottom and the long edge on the sides, just like this. Now with this, our base is fully complete, so let's move on to my favorite part, that are these beautiful Graphy 45 papers called Portrait of a Lady. And just look how pretty. So let's move on. So this is our page 1 with the two flaps on the right. On top, I'm going to use this 4x6 cutter pad that I've trimmed it down to 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. On the back side of this flap, I'm going to add a magnet here, and you can either cover this up directly with the 4x6 photo, or I'm just using a textured cardstock here. Again, trimmed it down to 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. I'm refraining from using a DSP here because anyway this portion is going to get covered with the picture. You can also use it for journaling. Next up, you have this piece that measures 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. And on the back side, you can either directly put a 5x7 picture, or I'm again using a piece of textured cardstock that measures 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. On the base, we're just gonna add the second piece of our magnet, and my paper measures 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. As you can see, I'm using liquid glue here. You can also use your ATG gun. And let's move on to the second page. Here you just have a piece of 5 3/4 by 7 3/4, and I'm just adding a border strip here as a belly band, and I'm matting it on black cardstock. I'm going to just put a little bit glue on the edges. And stick it down like this. So page 2 is done. Page 3 is an overlapping keyed fold with the pocket inside. We're going to start with the overlapping keyed fold. We need 2 sheets of 4 inches by 7 3/4 of an inch, and I'm putting my magnet right on top over here and cover it with our DSP, and do the same thing for the second flap as well. On the inside again, we have 2 pieces of 4 inches by 7 3/4. So the measurements for the base will differ according to what size punch you use. I've used a 1-inch border punch. So my base page measures 5 1/4 by 5 3/4. And next I'm just adding a little glue on the sides of my pocket and just sticking it down like this. And this piece measures 2 3/4 by 5 3/4. So this page is done. Now fourth page is our 5x7 trifold, and we're going to take a piece that measures 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. And that's it, just that one sheet of paper for this entire page, and I'll show you how. So just take out your paper trimmer and align the right side of your page to the 1/2 inch mark on the right side, and pull your blade down a little so that you're leaving a 1/2 inch from top and bottom. Don't completely cut it down. So basically we're creating a 1/2 inch border throughout on all the 4 sides, just like that. So now just trim the edges and disconnect the 2 pieces. So your outer part will go at the bottom, and the center will go perfectly on your 5x7 trifold. So we're going to start by sticking the base down first. Now I'm using one print for the base and the other for the trifold. You can also use the same, it's completely up to you. Now next I'm going to stick a trifold piece on top, and I'm doing a ribbon closure here. So I'm just, before sticking the trifold down, I'm going to stick the ribbon first behind our trifold. So I'm using a 1.5 inch satin ribbon here. You can also do a magnet closure or whatever you like. Now once you're done sticking your ribbon, just completely cover the back side of your trifold with glue and stick it down nicely in the center of your base. Now I'm leaving the inside of the trifold blank because you can directly put 5x7 pictures on it. And page 4 is done. Next is a page 5, which has a large pocket and a top flap. Now I'm first attaching a magnet on our top flap, and here again I've used a 4x6 cutter part that I have trimmed it down to 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. And on the back side of the flap, again I've used my textured cardstock that measures 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. Again, you can just directly put a 4x6 picture here or use this as a journaling spot. Now next I'm just putting a 2-inch strip here. If you want, you can cover the whole portion as well, but I personally think it's not necessary. So this measures 2 inches by 5 3/4. Now next we're going to do our pocket. So first we'll attach the second piece of our magnet and cover it with a paper measuring 5 3/4 by 5 3/4. And this page is done. Now on page 6 we have a kind of a double flap, and you're going to put 3 pieces of magnets here, so just bear with me. So we're going to start with the top portion of a smaller flap, and I'm using 2 pieces here of 2 3/4 by 4 and 13 by 16 of an inch. Now you can also use one full sheet of 2 3/4 by 7 3/4. Now on the back side, I'm just gonna start with a magnet here first, and then I'm gonna put one piece of 2 3/4 by 7 3/4. I just had 2 scraps left, so I'm just gonna join them, but you can just put one full piece of 2 3/4 by 7 3/4. Next we're going to do the inside part of a larger flap, and the paper measures 4 inches by 7 3/4. And now next we're going to do the top part of our larger flap. We're going to attach the second piece of our magnet here and cover it with another 4 inches by 7 3/4 of an inch. Now the last one is our base, which measures 5 3/4 by 7 3/4, and here we have our third piece of the magnet. So this is also done. And next is our page 7, which has a side flap and a stacked pocket, and I'm using a brad closure here. So I'm going to start by marking where I want my brads to go so that my alignment is perfect. And when you're attaching your brads, just make sure you leave like a little 1/8 of an inch space between your brad and your paper so that there's space for the twine to go. So these gorgeous brads are from the Graphic 45 Staples. And here I'm gonna start by sticking these brad pieces first, which was a huge mistake because obviously while sticking the other pieces of paper I won't have a flat surface, so don't do that. Start with the back page 8 first, then the other pieces, and then in the end do the brad pieces. So I'm just putting all the measurements on the screen. You just simply have to stick all of them down. So I'm just going to finish this up with a twine. So our page 8 is just a large pocket with a border punch, and again now this measurement will depend on what punch you're using. I have used the 1-inch border punch, so my measurements are 5 3/4 by 5 1/4 for the top part, and I'm just applying glue on the edges of our pocket and sticking it down. So on top of the pocket, you can either use one piece of paper that's 2 3/4 by 5 3/4, and what I have done is used a 1/2-inch border strip along with a 2-inch piece of DSP. So page 8 is also done. Moving on to page 9. So this one has 4 overlapping flaps, and we're going to start with the top left side flap, where I'm going to first put a magnet on top and cover it with a piece of paper that measures 3 inches by 4 inches. Now on the back side, I'm again using my textured cardstock. You can either directly stick a 3 by 4 inch photo here or use this for journaling. Now the second piece of magnet will go at the base, and we're going to cover this with a paper that measures 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. So none of the other flaps need any magnets because since they're overlapping, they're going to hold each other down. I'm just repeating the same process on all other flaps. Here I've used a 3 by 4 inch cut apart. So basically I've used my 3 by 4 cut aparts on opposite flaps and regular 3 by 4 inch DSP on opposite flaps. Now, as you can see, they are all holding each other down. You just need that magnet on the last flap that you shot. So this page is done. Moving on to page 10. Here we have an overlapping gatefold with the pockets on the side flaps. So we're going to start with the base page, that is again 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. Now on the side flaps, we're going to first put this 4 by 4 inch paper on top, and I'm just going to apply some glue on the side of the pocket and stick it down. And on top of the pocket, the paper measures 4 inches by 3 3/4 of an inch. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. The only difference is that our pocket is completely detached, so we're gonna put glue on 3 sides and attach to the base. Now moving on to the outer part of our gatefold, here we're going to put our magnets. So on top we have one magnet here first, and cover it with the paper measuring 4 inches by 7 3/4, and do the same thing on the other flap. You put the second piece of your magnet and cover it with 4 inches by 7 3/4 inch. And this page is also done. So page 11 has these two flaps on top and bottom, and again I'm just going to put textured cardstock at the back of these flaps. You can either do this or directly put your 4 by 6 picture, but you need to trim it down to 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. On the base, again we have a piece of paper measuring 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. Now on top of the flaps we have these two pieces that measure 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. On top I've just used another 4 by 6 cut apart that I've trimmed it down to the size. So here I'm going to do an eyelet and ribbon closure. So I'm just measuring where I need to put my eyelets, so again, so that I don't mess up the alignment. And I'm just going to punch it out with my crocodile, add my eyelets and set it with the crocodile. So the ribbon I'm going to use is a matching half-inch satin ribbon. I'm just going to tie it in a pretty little bow. At least I'm going to try. So just trimming off the excess, and we're done with page 11. Moving on to our last page, we again have that 5 by 7 trifold here, and this is exactly the same way we did our page 4. So our paper measures 5 3/4 by 7 3/4, and I've cut a half-inch border here, and the rest is exactly the same way we did our page 4. And with this, all our pages are done. So let's just quickly go through them. So let's move on to our cover now. We're going to start with our back inside cover. And for our diagonal pockets, I've just cut paper diagonally like that from one corner to the other corner, and it measures 2 7/8 by 3 7/8. And for the base, I have a paper measuring 6 1/4 by 8 inches, and we're just gonna stick everything down.
So moving on to the front inside cover, here I've just created a dark spot with one of the cut apart pieces. So here I have this sheet of paper that measures 5 3/4 by 8 inches, and on top I'm just putting my cut apart piece that measures 2.5 by 8 inches. I'm putting glue on just the 3 sides and sticking it down. You can also just put one piece of paper that measures 6 1/4 by 8 inches, completely up to you. So once our inside covers are done, we're going to start attaching our pages to our base, and we're going to start from the last page moving on to the first page. So next I'm just gonna add our inlets to the pages that measure 5 3/4 by 7 3/4, and I've also used these mini inlets that measure 4 inches by 7 3/4. I'm just using a decorative corner punch, which is completely optional. Moving on to a front cover that measures 6 1/4 by 8 inches. So in this paper pack we have this cut apart piece from the main page of our paper pack that fits perfectly on the cover, but it's slightly short on length, so I'm just adding a little border strip at the bottom. This is truly my favorite part of the album. It just looks so beautiful. So for the spine we need a paper measuring 2.5 by 8 inches, and for the back cover we need 6 3/8 by 8 inches. And we're done. So all you gotta do is put some embellishments, and this is how mine looks after I completed it. So all I've done is add some bling on the cover, some chipboard elements, some flowers, some metal charms, and as I said, these papers are just so pretty that you don't need a lot of embellishing, to be honest. So hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I certainly enjoyed making this because these are one of my favorite kind of projects that are no scrap projects. And if you like the concept as well and want to see more such designs, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this tutorial, please show your support by liking this video and sharing it with your friends. And for more such videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you can also follow me on Instagram at YourPaperLove. If you do make this project, please do share it with me. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.